As a first-time seller, what parts of the process felt most unfamiliar or challenging, and how did Wise help you navigate those with confidence?
As a first time seller, there's a lot of unknowns when you decide to sell your business. And I thought the two main drivers that Wise brought to the table was explaining and understanding the process and then organizing the documentation to bring the transaction to completion.
Looking back on your transaction, where do you feel Wise Financial had the greatest impact, and how did that ultimately influence your outcome?
I believe that it was the monthly preparation of the financial documents, meaning the EBITDA, updating it on a monthly basis with all of the add backs, as well as backlog and backlog reporting, and keeping that data up to date and then organizing it in a fashion that it could be delivered to the prospective buyers or buyer. And again, making the transaction a lot more organized and seamless.
Preparation is something we at Wise Financial emphasize heavily. How did that show up in your experience, and what difference did it make once you went to market?
I think for me, the most important part of it was the relationship that Ken and I had developed. We were pretty aligned on the go to market strategy, and I think he did a great job of taking that strategy and implementing it. And then, secondly, he made some strategic decisions, one being the informational video to avoid continuous phone calls from multiple buyers asking the same questions, which I think takes a lot of pressure off of the seller and allows you to be forward focusing on the real data that the buyers are looking for. And it allowed us to keep a good cadence on providing all the financial documentation, all of the additional documentation required, such as customers, reporting, and things of that nature that were really important for the overall deal.
Wise Financial brings a strong accounting and financial lens into M&A. Where did that expertise make the biggest difference in your transaction?
Fortunately, we had strong financial management systems in place. What Wise brought to the table was organizing all of that information in a format that could then be distributed to the potential buyers and allow them to make offers on the business that were reflective of our value.
Throughout the process, how would you describe our team's responsiveness and communication? Was there a specific moment where they helped resolve a concern or issue for you?
Wise was responsive to the buyer's requests and creating financial presentations to meet the buyer's required needs. And I think that that was really important in the process because it showed a really consistent cadence with the buyers. And I think it gave them a comfort level of the information that was being provided and that it was accurate, it was well presented, and again, it helped with the overall transactional process.
How would you describe our role in working with the buyer and their team? Did anything about our approach stand out during the process?
Yes, I found that Wise had really good relationships with some of the potential buyers, and it made it a little bit easier through the initial introductions, as well as the introduction of the video, as well as presenting numbers. And I think that Wise had credibility with those buyers because of past transactions, and I think that brought a lot to the table. Secondly, early on in the process, we had a miscommunication regarding backlog, and the backlog numbers were reported a little bit overstated, not terribly, but a little bit overstated. Personally, I was concerned that this was going to reflect poorly on us as the seller. And I believe that Ken and the way that the team handled it, it became a non-issue. And we were able to work through it very cleanly with the prospective buyers. And I think the trust, because of Wise's position in the marketplace, was already there and built. And it allowed for it to be a non-starter.
During negotiations, did you feel your interests were well represented? Can you recall a moment where we really advocated for you?
First and foremost, I feel that our interests were well represented by Wise Financial Consultant. Ken and I were very aligned on the strategy, on our go-to-market strategy. And I believe that the process was fluid between our teams and that we systematically presented the information at a fast pace. The deal flow was quick. They managed the Google spreadsheet docs on a consistent basis, and there were hundreds of requests. And I think what made it easy to get through was the Wise approach, which was take it in small bites. And obviously that made it easier to digest and deliver to the buyer.
How did Wise collaborate with your other advisors, including your M&A counsel, and what value did that coordination bring?
From my perspective, this was one of the biggest values that Wise brought to the equation because they did the introduction to us to Mark Katz. Their familiarity with each other, meaning Wise and Mark, made the deal flow and the transaction seamless. And then the people involved, CJ and Shannon, provided excellent counsel, walking us through really complicated documents. We clearly identified areas that we had to stand firm on and areas that we were willing to give on. And I just think that between the three organizations and because of the past relationship with Wise, it just made it so much easier to get through the transaction.
Would you recommend Wise Financial to other business owners? If so, what would you say is the biggest reason they should consider working with them?
I've already recommended Wise to other potential sellers. And what I tell them is that Wise and Ken and his team are honest brokers. I believe that they bring a process to the equation, which makes it really easy to understand how you start, the middle, and the ending. And they help you collect all that information. Then they package that information in such a way that the buyers are looking for, which allows you to be forward facing to data collection. And I think that's really important. But most importantly, it's trust. And I believe that the trust I developed in Ken and his team throughout this process is something that you don't have very often in your career. And Wise proved to be a very trustworthy organization, and they delivered what they said they were going to deliver. And they were there right to the end of the transaction, right down to the last nuts and bolts. And I would highly recommend them to anybody who is looking to transact their business.